Thank you very much. As you probably have heard, and some of you have reported, a missile was launched a little while ago from North Korea. I will only tell you that we will take care of it. We have General Mattis in the room with us, and we've had a long discussion on it. It is a situation that we will handle. With that being said, Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi did not show up for our meeting today. I'm not really that surprised. We have a lot of differences. They're weak on crime. They're weak on illegal immigration. They want the illegal folks to come pouring into our border, and a lot of problems are being caused, although we've stopped it to a large extent, as much as you can without the wall, which we're going to get. They, before this meeting and before this missile launch, they've been weak on military in terms of spending. They're very hard to get for military. They want it for a lot of other things, but the military is always secondary to them. The military, to me, is number one. We won't be here without our powerful military, and we're building it up stronger, bigger, better than ever before, and General Mattis can testify to that. And the other thing, they want tax increases, and we want major tax decreases. So they decided not to show up. They've been all talk, and they've been no action. And now it's even worse. Now it's not even talk. So they're not showing up for the meeting. I will say this, in light of the missile launch, probably they'll be here fairly quickly, or at least discussions will start taking place fairly quickly. I think that we're in a very good position in terms of the meeting we just had over at the Capitol with the Republican senators. It was outstanding. I think we have tremendous support. I was just informed by Mitch that we had a unanimous vote from the Republican side, at least. We had a unanimous vote on the tax bill, and it goes now the next step, and I think we're going to get it passed. I think it's going to pass, and it's going to be very popular. It's going to have lots of adjustments before it ends, but the end result would be a very, very massive, the largest in the history of our country, tax cut, and lots of good things are going to happen, including the bringing back to our country of, it probably will end up being over $4 trillion money offshore that's stagnant, that companies, and they're just not able to bring it back. So I think it's going to be a number over $4 trillion. Corporate will be able to compete now against the world. If you look at China, if you look at so many other countries, if you look at many of the countries, China's at 15%. They're lower than us. We're getting it down to a level that is either going to be lower or right in the ballpark, so that we can compete much better with our companies, our great, great companies. And that means jobs, and it means lots of other things. I'm very happy to see that the consumer confidence level is just about the highest it's ever been. In fact, I don't want to make any mistakes in front of the press because you'll get me on it, but to the best of my knowledge, it's the highest it's ever been. Consumer confidence has been setting records. They have confidence in the people leading their country. And I will say that I think it's going to go better and better, and I do believe that this vote on taxes, which are really tax cuts and reform, is going to be very, very important. So we had a good day today. We had a phenomenal meeting with the Republican senators. We had, it was very special, that meeting. In many respects, I wish you could have been inside that room. It was very, very special. The camaraderie, it was somewhat of a love fest. They want to see it happen. They want to see it happen, not only for the Republican Party. I think much more importantly, they want to see it happen for the country, because they know how important it is for us to compete and win. And with that, maybe we'll start with Paul Ryan to say a few words about where we stand with different things, and then I'll ask Mitch McConnell.
Okay, I'll just briefly say I think it's regrettable that our Democratic colleagues in the leadership chose not to join us today. For a bill to become a law, Congress has to pass a bill and the President signs a bill. That means Congress and the White House always negotiate legislation. We have important work to do. We have big deadlines to meet. We have a military in need of our support, and that work needs to happen now. And I just think it's very regrettable that our Democratic colleagues in leadership chose to not participate, because we have to negotiate these bills to get this work done for the people we represent, and especially to help our military with these difficult situations we have. And I just hope that our friends in leadership on the other side of the aisle will choose to participate so we can get people's work done.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I would just add, I've been in this position
Thank you
under a
very
couple
much.
of previous
As
presidents.
you
I can't
probably
recall ever
heard,
turning down
And some
an
of you have
opportunity to go down to the
reported
White
a
House.
missile was launched.
As the Speaker mentioned, only one
while
person in
ago
America
from
can
North
sign a
Korea.
bill into
We'll
law,
tell
and that's
you
the
that
President of the
we will
United
take
States.
care
You
of it.
cannot negotiate
We have
the
General
year-end,
Mattis in
the
room
omnibus
with us,
spending
and,
bill without
had a long
the
discussion
person
on it.
who signs the bill.
It is a situation that
room.
we will handle.
So I think the
With that being said,
Democratic
Chuck
leaders of the
Schumer
House and Senate
and Nancy Pelosi
need
did
to
not show
understand
up
the
for
way
our
the
meeting.
government works. Going to be for the next year.
Well, we are very far apart because our views on crime and our views on immigration and the military, so many are different. But a lot of things have happened even over the last 2 hours with respect to the missile launch. We want our military funded, and we want it funded now. It's going to be bigger, better, stronger, it already is, than ever before. But we want to get going on that now. So that is a difference, in all fairness, from this morning when I told them that we're way, way far away. And with that, I may just have General Mattis say just a couple of words about what he has found out. General, do you want to say just a couple of little pieces of information?
Mr. President, Senator, Speaker, a little over 2.5 hours ago, North Korea launched an intercontinental ballistic missile. It went higher, frankly, than any previous shot they've taken. It's a research and development effort on their part to continue building ballistic missiles that can threaten everywhere in the world, basically. And in response, the South Koreans have fired some pinpoint missiles out into the water to make certain North Korea understands that they could be taken under fire by our ally. But the bottom line is it's a continued effort to build a threat, a ballistic missile threat that endangers world peace, regional peace, and certainly the United States.
Thank you, General, and we will take care of that situation. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mr. President, does it change anything to your basic approach to North Korea, these missile launches today? Does it change anything about your basic approach to dealing with it?
Nothing changed. Nothing changed. We
Do you
have
believe there would be
a very serious approach, and nothing changed. We take it very seriously.
Do you believe there would be a government shutdown, Mr. President? And would you blame Democrats if that happens?
Well, if that happens, I would absolutely blame the Democrats. If it happens, it's going to be over illegals pouring into the country, crime pouring into the country, no border wall, which everybody wants. I got elected partially because of a border wall. You look at the military, we want strong funding for the military. They don't. So many things. As an example, they want high taxes. We want cut taxes. We're going to cut taxes. We're going to reform. We're going to simplify. They want high taxes. We want low taxes. So there's a lot of big differences. So we'll see what happens as to shutdown. We'll see. But right now, things have changed over the last 2 hours because 2 hours ago a missile was launched. I think that will have a huge effect on Schumer and Pelosi. I think. We'll see. We're going to learn very soon. They should be calling immediately and say, we want to see you, but probably they won't because nothing to them is important other than raising taxes. That's the only thing they like doing is raising taxes. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Are the North Koreans, Mr. President, are the North Koreans thumbing their nose at you after your...
Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, folks. So that was the president talking a little bit about, he doesn't really talk a lot about certain issues, but right now we're going to go to the State Department briefing where more information is going to be given regarding this issue in North Korea. So we're going to head out to the State Department briefing with Heather Nauert. So don't go anywhere. And you can watch it here live at Golden State Times. It should be coming up on your screen in just a few minutes here. I'm going to be putting it up, and we'll go on from there. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Jen. I'm from Golden State Times. Please share the stream, and let's do this.
Hi, everybody. How are you today? We've had a busy day, so thank you, all of you, for your patience. We obviously had some breaking news that happened just a short while ago, so wanted to be able to better assess that situation, which we're still continuing to do that. But nevertheless, here we are, and it's great to be with you again today. Start with a couple pieces of news coming out of the State Department. First is that we would like to welcome Manisha Singh as the new Assistant Secretary for Economic and Business Affairs to the State Department. She is the first woman appointed to serve in this position. She comes to the department with a wealth of experience that will benefit our economic and business efforts abroad. Assistant Secretary Singh previously served as Chief Counsel and Senior Advisor to U.S. Senator Dan Sullivan, who is from Alaska. He was himself a former Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Economic, Energy, and Business Affairs. She also previously served as Deputy Assistant Secretary in the Bureau of Economic, Energy, and Business Affairs. We're pleased to have her back again at the State Department, as she will now lead our efforts to promote prosperity for Americans at home and abroad. I had the opportunity to meet her just yesterday, and we are all really looking forward to working with her. Second thing taking place in India right now is the Global Entrepreneurship Summit. The Global Entrepreneurship Summit is underway in Hyderabad, India, where it will continue through this Thursday. The GES is the preeminent annual entrepreneurship gathering that convenes emerging entrepreneurs, investors, and supporters from around the world, and we are excited about the focus that this year's GES puts on the U.S.-India bilateral relationship. GES 2017 participants will empower innovators and entrepreneurs, particularly women, to utilize new skills and resources to achieve success through plenaries, workshops, and a pitch competition. This is the 8th annual GES and the first time the GES has taken place in South Asia. It reflects the region's strong entrepreneurship achievements and future, as well as the rapid growth of the U.S.-India strategic partnership. More than 1,500 entrepreneurs, investors, and supporters of entrepreneurs from 150 countries will attend the summit. It is the first time that more than 50% of the participants are women. There's also American entrepreneurs and investors from 38 states, the District of Columbia, and Puerto Rico. The State Department worked with U.S. embassies around the world to identify entrepreneurs who demonstrated a need for investment, mentorship, and business partnerships. We worked with top U.S. organizations, incubators, and accelerators, as well as other government agencies to identify entrepreneurs from across the United States to attend. The connections of all the participants will make through GES to help promote entrepreneurship and economic growth in the United States, India, and around the world. Senior Advisor to the President, Ivanka Trump, USAID Administrator Mark Green, and U.S. Ambassador to India, Kenneth Juster, are among the senior U.S. government officials representing the United States at the gathering. If you didn't have a chance to watch Ivanka Trump's remarks from a plenary earlier today, I would encourage you to go to the website. It's GES2017.org, and that's where her remarks are posted. Well, there is a time change between the U.S. and India, certainly. But we're certainly proud of what she's been able to accomplish, and I can think of no better representative for the U.S. government to talk about women's entrepreneurship than her. A couple more items I'd like to bring to you right now. The next is about Cuba, where there were elections that took place on Sunday, November the 26th. Cuba held municipal elections, the first stage in what we consider to be a flawed process that will culminate in a non-democratic selection of a new president in 2018. Unfortunately, the elections that took place further demonstrate how the Cuban regime maintains an authoritarian state while attempting to sell the myth of a democracy around the world. Despite courageous efforts by an unprecedented number of independent candidates this year, none were allowed on the ballot. The regime once again used intimidation, arcane technicalities, and false charges to discourage and disqualify independent candidates from running. Democracy is not quantified by participation alone. Democracy is undermined when voters may only choose candidates who follow one ideology. It's important to remember the dozens of political prisoners who are unjustly held in Cuba. So far in 2017, there have been more than 4,500 arbitrary detentions for political motives. The detentions show that Cuban citizens cannot exercise their fundamental freedoms to organize, assemble, or express themselves. Those are all vital components of democratic elections. And finally, I'd like to talk about the DPRK missile launch. And the Secretary would like to release this statement right now. And then I'd be happy to take your questions. Yes, it is. The United States strongly condemns North Korea's launch of what was likely an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan, indiscriminately threatening its neighbors, the region, and global stability. The DPRK's relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them must be reversed. Together, the international community must continue to send a unified message to North Korea that the DPRK must abandon its weapons of mass destruction programs. All nations must continue strong economic and diplomatic measures. In addition to implementing all existing UN sanctions, the international community must take additional measures to enhance maritime security, including the right to interdict maritime traffic transporting goods to and from the DPRK. The United States, in partnership with Canada, will now convene a meeting of the United Nations Command Sending States to include the Republic of Korea and Japan and other key affected countries to discuss how the global community can counter North Korea's threat to international peace. Diplomatic options remain viable and open for now. The United States remains committed to finding a peaceful path to denuclearization and to ending belligerent actions taken by North Korea. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
So on North Korea,
Yes.
this meeting was previously going to be held, or it's been called in response to this launch?
I believe that this was an option that was being considered for some time, but yet with this latest launch, I believe that they decided that this is something they want to do. I know the Secretary spoke a short while ago with the Canadian Foreign Minister, Christina Freeland. Canada is one of the member countries of the 16 convening nations. Those were the nations that all worked together back in the 1950s.
1950,
Back during the Korean War. Yeah. Yeah.
And that meeting would be in New York?
I don't know. I don't have
Tomorrow?
details of that. Again, a lot of this is just coming together right now as we're responding to what took place today.
Has he made any other calls that you're aware of, other than to?
Any other calls? I know that the Secretary has had interagency calls today. As many of you know, it was on the public schedule that the Secretary met with King Abdullah of Jordan. At that time, he was passed a note in his bilateral meeting in which he was informed of what we believe to be the ICBM launch. The most recent launch prior to this was September 15th. So the Secretary was notified then. He immediately came back to the State Department, and that's where he had some interagency calls, and since then has spoken with the Foreign Minister of Canada. I know he plans to have a discussion with other of our allies, too.
But not yet.
As of right now, I mean, literally, this just happened about 2
I know,
hours
I know. I'm
ago.
not trying to
So
be critical. I just
first
wanna know.
step is talking with the interagency. As that step was taking place, we were assembling this statement from the Secretary that I just read out to you. And then I know he spoke with Christina Freeland. Since then, I'm not aware of the exact calls, but I know that he was planning to call some of the allies in the region.
This is two missiles launch or three missiles?
Pardon me?
Is that two missile launch or three missiles?
As of today?
Yeah.
I think we're still working through the information, but as far as I know, there was just one, but we can double check that. Again, this information is just fresh, so I don't want to get ahead of anything that the Department of Defense has said so far. They issued a statement earlier, and for the specifics of the technicals, I would just refer you to the Department of Defense.
So this issue will be bringing into UN sanctions again, or?
I don't want to get ahead of any potential UN sanctions, but I think convening this committee of nations to look at what to do next will be a significant move. Okay? Hi, Dave.
That committee just talks about maritime, the maritime.
And again, this is all fresh and this is all new. But my understanding is that there will be two pieces to this. One, we overall, the United States, the United Nations believe that there is a right to interdict maritime traffic that would be transporting goods to and from North Korea. That's part one. Then the United States, in partnership with Canada, which I think is why the Secretary spoke with his counterpart there today, will convene this meeting of the United Nations Command Sending States. That's the actual title of it. That includes 16 countries, in addition to Japan and North Korea. And they will have a discussion about how the overall...
South Korea.
Excuse me, South Korea, thank you. Have a discussion about how the global threat of North Korea persists and what all of our nations think that we need to do to try to solve the problem. Okay, hi Dave.
So the plan before today was that there would be a period of relative calm before you allow North Korea to join talks on its own disarmament. Now you haven't publicly put a time scale on that, though we have seen.
And we
reports-
wouldn't put a
we
time
have seen
frame on
reports
that.
the
We've been
Ambassador
very
Young was
clear.
suggesting 60 days, but let's say you haven't.
I'm not aware of that, but okay.
Yeah. Regardless of how long it would have been, has the clock gone back to zero?
I don't have an answer to that. Look, I think we have always been very clear that we would be open to talks with North Korea, but that North Korea, and we would have said this last week, we would have said this 24 hours ago, is not showing any serious signs of wanting to sit down and have conversations with the world, with the global community about the peace and stability and denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So 24 hours ago, they weren't prepared to talk. Today, they certainly aren't prepared to talk.
Has there been any attempt to open diplomatic channels since this launch today?
Since this happened, since we got notice of it 3 hours ago, not that I am aware of. I can certainly tell you that the South Korean counterpart to our ambassador, Jo Yoon, is here in Washington today. They were having a meeting at some point this afternoon. I anticipate that we will have a readout of that meeting sometime perhaps today or tomorrow. Okay?
Do you have any comment on the recently violation of North Korea armistice agreement at JSA, Panmunjom?
I'm sorry, I don't.
You don't
I don't.
have anything comment on that? JSA, North Korean military detectors come into South Korea, so they should.
You mean the defectors?
Yeah.
The defectors who've left
Yeah.
North Korea for South Korea. That's the question that you're asking? I know with the most recent soldier who defected from North Korea, and my colleague Brian Hook wrote a very compelling editorial in the New York Times about this very matter, about the condition, the physical condition that that man was in, the number of times that he was shot at by his own government as he was defecting to South Korea, the South Koreans and the Americans who helped facilitate his survival, who essentially rescued him and brought him into the hospital. I mean, look, any country that's willing to shoot its own people for crossing its borders is a country that is not aligned with the overall global community. It is a country, or I should say a regime, that does not want to see peace if they're willing to treat its own people that way. But their record of how they treat people is long-standing, and we've seen the situation of how that soldier was treated there. Okay, that's all I have for you on that. Hey, Warren, how you been?
About earlier this month, there was the chairwoman of the South Korean ruling party was here in Washington, and she was saying that that she doesn't think the North Koreans are willing to talk until after they've achieved their goal of having a weapon that can reach the United States, and also the North Koreans have said that they're willing to talk. They've said in the past that they would talk to the Americans, but not about their nuclear program. So, where does that leave?
We have.
Is there like a middle ground, or is there a position somehow at all acceptable to the United States?
I think today is the wrong day to ask. When they launch what we believe to be an intercontinental ballistic missile, they are not showing that they are serious about having conversations. Our ultimate goal is to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. That has not changed. Part of what we say in that goal is that we want to support our strong allies, Japan, our allies in the Republic of Korea. It is an ironclad relationship that we have with them. I imagine today that they are understandably nervous. We've had a period of relative calm, if you would call it that, since September 15th, since the last testing. But nevertheless, that is a huge concern. And it's a concern that not just the United States shares, but the entire world shares, the civilized world shares. And I'll go back to saying this one more time again, with the two unanimous UN Security Council resolutions, which all the nations signed on, including China and Russia, onto those two new UN Security Council resolutions. Then we've had success with other countries jumping on board and choosing to assist us with our maximum pressure campaign. It is a disappointment in what we saw today in terms of this testing that was conducted. That is a disappointment, but diplomacy still remains our option. We will have conversations with our allies and partners where to go from here. Okay, and I'm not going to have a lot more for you all on this related to DPRK. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Another subject when you're ready.
Sure. Okay. Hold on, just 1 second. You want to last one? Hi, good to see you.
Can you tell us more about this meeting that the U.S. will be convening with Canada? When is it going to take place, and then what are you hoping to achieve from it?
So Again, this is all new, okay? So we don't have a date that's scheduled for that. As soon as we're able to put this on the calendar, as you can imagine, it's a pretty big feat to gather 16 countries together, plus South Korea and also Japan. But that is a meeting that we will plan to pull together. Where exactly it will take place, I just don't know. But we'll talk about the next steps forward, what we need to do, what all of us need to do in light of DPRK's continued destabilizing activities.
But are you thinking of sometime this week, or is this more of a?
Again,
far in the
I
future
do
type
not
of
know.
meeting?
This is just being pulled together. As soon as I have information and a meeting to announce for you, I'll certainly bring it to you. Okay? Arsha,
North
yeah.
Korea, we have out of New York diplomats saying that the United States is requesting a UN Security Council meeting on North Korea. Is that correct?
I would have to check with Ambassador Nikki Haley's office on that. I just don't want to get ahead of anything that they may be announcing. I don't want to speak on her behalf. But if I get anything for you before we end, we'll certainly bring that to you. Okay, Andrea.
Thank you very much. The secretary said today that reports of hollowing out are false, and also suggested during his talk today that there are going to be cuts because things are getting better, because things are getting better around the world. A lot of questions about his saying that the reports of hollowing out are false. You yourself have acknowledged a morale problem. There have been dozens of resignations or early retirements or buyouts. How does he justify not having full, confirmed, permanent assistant secretaries in key regions around the world and people not even yet nominated?
Okay, well, that is overall, I mean, there are a lot of questions bundled into that. So let me try to take it piece by piece. The first one, in terms of personnel. We have had now a steady stream of our assistant secretaries coming in. I just mentioned our new assistant secretary for our economic bureau. Pleased to have her in. We were just able to get in our new head of diplomatic security on November the 3rd. He is now in. I was briefed by him this morning. Wes Mitchell, our new assistant secretary for European Affairs, our European bureau, is now in. So there's a steady stream of people.
Africa, Asia,
hold on.
South Asia.
Hold on. In addition, we have other people in the pipeline. Is this all moving fast enough? Absolutely not. We would like it to move faster. The secretary has had conversations internally here, and I know he has a lot of conversations with people on the Hill, including a flurry of letters that will go back and forth between our building and also members on Capitol Hill, trying to get people through. So we would like it to move faster. Part of that is not having those selections made, but part of that is the responsibility of the Hill as well to get some of those people moved forward.
Isn't it mostly because this administration has been so slow to nominate and because of the job freeze?
You know, those are two different issues altogether. I think it's an unfair characterization to say that the administration has been slow to nominate. There is a process in place in which the White House may have a portfolio of people that they want. May I finish?
11
Let
months
me finish.
in.
Let me finish. Where the White House will say, "Hey, consider these people," and then Secretary Tillerson and some members of his staff will say, "Hey, here are some other people to consider." All of that takes time, but the secretary, and I will certainly be the first to acknowledge, that we would all like this to move faster. I mean, it is great getting new people on board, to get that fresh energy and enthusiasm coming into the building. Not that the folks here don't have that. They certainly do. They have it in spades. But when you talk to our career people, they look forward to getting additional political appointees in place because they bring forward new ideas. So it's not going fast enough, Andrea. I will be the first to admit that, but the secretary certainly says that as well.
But doesn't a lot of this fall on the State Department and the White House jointly for not nominating people quickly enough? It is 11 months in, and the secretary praises the acting secretaries. Fine, but they're not Trump appointees. They don't carry the same weight with foreign governments.
I understand that. I can tell you that there are acting assistant secretaries, and the secretary has certainly said to them, you know, it is a tough job to be an acting. You maybe have to work even twice as hard with your foreign counterparts to let them know that you have the access to the information, to let them know that you are relevant and you are speaking on behalf of the secretary and administration. But as I have seen here, how professional our people are, our career people are, when they are handed a policy that they may or may not agree with, they will work hard to implement that policy and push forward with that policy. I've seen it time and time again, where they may not be in love with it, but yet they do it because they're patriotic, it's their job, and that's what they're here to do, to serve their country regardless of politics. Hi, Nick.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? I think a week or two ago at a briefing, you said that the difference between this year and last year for Foreign Service officers
Yeah.
was a number of 10.
I
Are
have
those
to,
numbers still accurate?
I have to go back and look at my numbers because I'm not a numbers person, admittedly, as many of you are probably not either, and go through that for you. Let me see where I can find them. To my knowledge, and maybe Robert can assist me here, I do not believe the numbers have changed. We're still good with, okay. So if you'd like me to go over those numbers again, I certainly can. Although we did go over it a week and a half ago. All right, let's do it again. As of October the 31st, the Senior Foreign Service had 985 officers, with 63 waiting for Congress to approve their promotion. I believe now that some of those, and I want to double check this, but I believe that Congress has approved some of those for promotions. So I want to get back to you on that number, okay? So do not quote me on the number for the congressional promotions because we're still waiting for our Human Resources Department to get back to us on this. Once those promotions are granted, and perhaps they have been, HR, call down here. We'd like to hear from you. Maybe that's a good way to get that number going. There will be 1,048 senior Foreign Service officers. That is a number nearly identical to the 1,058 senior Foreign Service officers at the same point in 2016. From February the 1st to September the 30th, 2017, 244 Foreign Service officers and Foreign Service specialists combined retired. 249 retired in the same period in 2016. So you have a difference there of 5. The State Department has virtually the same number of Foreign Service employees today at 13,873 as it did in 2016 at 13,980. So just to compare those numbers again. Today, 13,873. The year 2016, 13,980. The numbers are pretty close. When it has been reported a 60% reduction in career ambassadors, we regard that as a misleading description. When Secretary Tillerson was sworn in, there were 6 career ambassadors serving. 2 of them have since retired. Today, 2 serve with this rank, which is within the historical norms of 1 to 7 at any one time since 1980. Since the year 1955, Congress has only approved 58 people for that distinction. The Secretary went over some of these numbers today in his remarks at the Wilson Center, so I just wanted to reiterate those as you requested, Nick.
Just a couple things on this.
Yeah.
One on the career ambassadors. The Secretary said that when he took over the department, there were 6, and he said 4 of those people have retired.
2 have since retired. I'm sorry?
He said 4.
Oh,
So,
okay. I have in my notes, 2 have
he
retired. Okay.
He then went on to say they reached 65, they retired, they moved on. At least 2 of those 4, one was your predecessor, was 55, Toria Newland, when she retired, not 65. So he suggested that they hit mandatory retirement age, but she didn't, and I'm told that Christy Kenny was in her early 60s when she retired. So it's not like they hit 65. Their
You're going to get in
ages-
trouble with these ladies for announcing ages here.
Hey.
Be careful with that, Arshad.
I'm not worried about that. So the question is, why did he say they hit 65 when at least 2 of the 4 were not 65?
Let me look into that for you, okay?
Okay. And then one other thing, can you provide, for people who've tried to look at the numbers that were released by AFSA, and AFSA says, well, we got those numbers from the State Department, and I know I asked for this the night that the AFSA letter came out, and I wasn't able to get it from you guys. I would like it if you would give not just these collective numbers of the total number of senior people in the Senior Foreign Service, but rather the actual comparatives so we can see how many career ministers are there, how many, just go down the gradation so that we can see what the change has been. It may be that you have overall roughly the same number of senior Foreign Service officers, but it may be that the people at the top, that there are fewer of those. And so I think you could make your case better if
I
you give
believe
us
I
the
believe that
breakdown.
information was sent up to Capitol Hill with that breakdown, and I will see if we can release that information that was put together, okay?
you.
And I'm sorry if your question was not answered in a timely fashion. We always try to get back with you just as quickly as possible to try to meet your deadlines.
So in one of your answers to a question on North Korea, you mentioned your
We're
colleague.
going back to North Korea. Okay.
No, I'm staying on this, but you
Okay.
mentioned Brian Hook's compelling editorial
Yeah.
in the New York Times. Well, there was an editorial in the New York Times today that some people also found to be compelling, written by two very respected former senior career diplomats, including one who used to stand not behind this podium, but behind the podium in the old briefing room. And it's a pretty harsh critique drawn on the reports that we've seen over the last couple of weeks that have gotten increasingly harsh, are increasingly critical of the secretary. And what in this op-ed, which I'm sure you've seen, Ambassadors Burns and Crocker make the point, or they argue, that the reduction in staff is not about belt tightening. It is a deliberate effort to deconstruct the State Department and the Foreign Service, which is a pretty stunning accusation to make.
It
So
certainly is.
can you answer, the Secretary didn't really get, I mean, he talked about it, but not specifically. Is he trying to deliberately deconstruct or dismantle the Foreign Service as part of some broader Trump administration scheme to tamp down the ability and influence of the U.S. globally?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And here's why. I know that the Secretary is committed to the mission of this building. I have watched him as he's talked with my colleagues, with our colleagues here in the building, and I know how much the overall mission of what the State Department does and our colleagues here do each and every day in very dangerous locations means to him. Now, does the Secretary believe that there are some inefficiencies in the building, that with 75,000 people operating here, that there are redundancies? Well, of course he believes that. But the accusation that was made in that editorial is their opinion. I think their opinion is wrong. As somebody who works here every day with these colleagues, everyone is pushing ahead with their assertive agenda in conducting diplomacy around the world in places like Iraq, in Syria, in places where our people are not armed. We are different, and the mission that our people undertake here is different than the Department of Defense. We go out in unstable places without an entire battalion around us, without companies around us, and do this job each and every day. These people are committed to the job just because there will be cuts, and there are budget cuts that were given to us. It's not as though the Secretary said, hey, here's the budget I want a smaller budget. That was given to us. We are trying to, the Secretary is trying to make cuts where he sees fit. But the commitment to this building, the commitment to our staff is solid. It is not changing. It is something that I know that the Secretary is passionate about. Our Deputy Secretary, John Sullivan, his uncle, as many of you may recall, was the last serving U.S. ambassador to Iran. He is committed to this building. He has a family member who works here in one of our bureaus, as well as a civil servant. He's committed to this. Tom Shannon, there is no better advocate for this building than those three, and that includes Tom Shannon, our Undersecretary for Political Affairs, the most senior Foreign Service officer, I believe, in the United States. He's incredible. None of those men will give up on the mission of this building or their strong belief in what our people do each and every day.
So a lot of the points that Ambassadors Burns and Crocker make in this are drawn, as I said, from this narrative that has evolved over the course of the last several months. Why do you think, if you so wholeheartedly, both you, the Secretary, and apparently everyone else on the Seventh Board, wholeheartedly disagrees with this, thinks it's false, thinks it's based on wrong numbers, how has this narrative exploded and taken control? Because you can't
I think it's based on politics.
It doesn't go, there isn't a single day that you can't read, that you don't find a story talking about how this Secretary of State is the worst Secretary of State ever. He needs to resign immediately. He's destroying the State Department. The United States is at its lowest standing ever. How is it that this narrative has been allowed to take hold? How is it that your efforts have not been effective? Have you guys looked at this?
Believe me,
Because I got one
sitting
suggestion.
here, I see the
got one
press
suggestion
each and
right
every day.
now.
Hold on, I want to hear your suggestion. I read those headlines each and every day. I wish there were more that I could do, okay? I'm passionate about this place. I love what we do and our mission here, and I enjoy working with all
right,
of you.
well, briefing
This is, hold on a
twice a
second.
week
Hold on,
for
Matt, hold on
45
one second.
minutes
Hold on a
is
second.
not the way to
Hold
do
on
it.
a second, okay? It is an important job to advocate and explain what we believe in here in terms of U.S. foreign policy and the activities of our personnel and the objectives that we have. We have gotten certainly bad press. I know that. I have said to you from day one that I am committed to working with you to try to advocate for better press access. Things have improved. It is still a work in progress, okay? It is something that I am committing to doing. We have a new person who's coming in. Andrea asks about our new people coming in. We have our new Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, Steve Goldstein, who will begin on Monday. He's committed to looking at the overall communications here at the State Department. When I said to you, certainly morale has been an issue for you, I will certainly admit that there are negative press stories. I am sorry that that has taken hold, that kind of narrative has taken hold. I'm working every day to the best of my ability to fix that. This is a big building, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
Last one, and I'll be very brief on this.
Oh,
Can you
and by the way,
address-
Matt?
Yeah.
Frankly, you bring up the issue of additional press briefings. We would welcome that.
Okay,
Certainly, we would
good.
welcome that. I would
And
personally.
maybe before like 6 p.m.
Well,
that would be
you
good, too.
you can talk. Hold on, you can talk to Kim Jong-un about that and that missile launch. And by the way, we had a bilateral meeting with His Majesty King of Jordan. So that is why we started late
That
today.
was a joke. Can I
So
just ask you
there's
two
a reason for
very
it.
briefly, can you address 2 points that were in this New York Times story? Did the secretary refuse consistently to meet with the former acting assistant secretary for DS about on security issues?
So you're referring to Bill Miller, who was our acting assistant secretary of diplomatic security. I had met Bill on numerous occasions when I first started here. I know that Bill has had about a dozen senior staff briefings with the secretary. I'm not going to have a ton of details for you on this. The secretary's office tells me that they don't have a record of Bill having requested a meeting. However, I just want to be clear that that doesn't necessarily mean that a meeting wasn't requested through different channels. That I just don't have the details on all of that. There is a statute in place that underscores the importance that the secretary get unvarnished information from his security diplomatic security head. If you would like to read it yourself, it's Public Law 114-323, Title 1, 103, December 16th, 2016, 130 Stat 1909. It provides that, quote, "The Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security shall report directly to the Secretary of State without being required to obtain the approval or concurrence of any other official of the Department of State as threats and circumstances require." Let me just mention that I met today, as I alluded to earlier, with our new Assistant Secretary, with our new Assistant Secretary for Diplomatic Security. Many of you probably know him, Michael Evanoff. He has served at the State Department for 26 years. He was the head of Secretary Rice's personal security detail. So some of you may have been you were on the road with him? Okay, and Andrea, you were too. I imagine that some of you were bailed out by him at some point, in some way, shape, or form.
We never get into trouble.
You never get into trouble on the road, but I suspect some of you were. Anyway, we are so thrilled to have him back here at the State Department. He was away for a few years in which he served in the private sector at some top companies. I met with him today. He is now back and had a briefing with the Secretary. I believe it was just earlier today. I asked him, "Sir, how do you feel about your ability to get information to this secretary?" And by the way, let me mention, this is a secretary who asks at every meeting in the morning, "Are our people safe?" And Assistant Secretary Evanoff said to me, "Yes, I have the ability to get the secretary information that he needs. Questions or decisions about our security posture around the world, which is hugely important. Diplomatic security involves 2,000 diplomatic security agents, but also many more thousands of agents who work locally employed staff around the world to protect our embassies. He has, the Assistant Secretary, the obligation to handle the security for all of that, in addition to helping to prepare the secretary's travels to different places. He said to me, Heather, yes. The secretary, when he offered the assistant secretary that position, said, my door is open to you anytime you want to meet. And certainly as the secretary takes security seriously, I believe that that will be the case.
Just that the implication from the whole Bill Miller anecdote, whether it's 100% accurate or not, was that, oh, here's the Republicans, they made this big stink about Benghazi and they really don't care about security. So
Right.
you would say that that implication is not, is false.
I've spoken to Bill in the past. I've not spoken to him about this, and I just don't have anything more for you on that. Yeah.
He took part in 12 senior staff briefings.
Correct.
Were those one-on-one meetings?
He did have some one-on-one meetings as well. The exact number I unfortunately do not have for you.
And you said that you checked and you're not aware of, but if he had one-on-one meetings, those were at the secretary's request or his request?
That I don't know.
Okay.
That I don't know.
And did he ever cite the statute that you cited in requesting a meeting?
That I'm not aware of. I've not spoken with Bill, so I'm not aware of all of the details of this. I'm trying to give you as much information as I have. Okay.
Can I just follow up?
Yeah.
Just briefly, to what Matt was discussing, you suggested that the budget was handed to us. My understanding of the budget process is that cabinet secretaries go in, they make their arguments, they get their marks. But I think the objection by Senators Corker, Graham, and others, Republicans on the Hill, was that the secretary embraced the mark he was given by OMB rather than arguing, and enthusiastically embraced it to the point where a bipartisan subcommittee had to criticize him to his face over this.
Let me go back and check my facts on this, but I recall being in meetings here, and Robert, maybe you can fact check me on the fly on this one, that I think the original budget cuts were suggested or given to us at, say, X, and the secretary argued for smaller budget cuts. And the secretary, to my knowledge, from my recollection, ended up winning that argument. Look, we're dealt with a budget that we have. We have this budget, and we're dealing with it. And the good thing is, at least in this, to the extent that and people are probably never happy about budget cuts, but that we can make the decisions about where those cuts are made.
And Congress has restored some of it. And I just wanted to point out to you that Richard Haas from the Council on Foreign Relations, a former high-ranking State Department and NSC official in Republican administrations, has said that his capacity for surprise was exhausted, but that Rex Tillerson today justified reductions in State Department personnel in part from the expectation that the U.S. is going to succeed in getting some conflicts resolved, referring to the Wilson appearance. And he asks rhetorically, really, which? North Korea, Ukraine, South China Sea, Yemen, Israel, Palestine? Is it realistic to suggest that you need fewer diplomats these days because there will be fewer crises?
I think that's what the secretary was saying. I think issues are being conflated there. One with dollars and two with personnel. I think when the secretary refers to, let's see, let me just read part of what he said today. And this is, I'm reading halfway into the sentence, so bear with me. Part of this bringing the budget numbers back down is reflective of an expectation that we're going to have success in some of these conflict areas, of getting those conflicts resolved and moving to a different place in terms of the kind of support that we have to give them. It's a combination of things: that sustainability, a recognition that those numbers are really the outliers. The numbers we're moving to are not the outliers. They're more historic in terms of levels of spending.
That is an expectation about resolving conflicts. Where? Afghanistan?
I know. I would like to answer your
Zimbabwe?
question, so hold on. So I think one example that he's referring to could be, let's take Syria right now. Syria is extremely expensive, putting the U.S. military aside, but in terms of our State Department work there, one of the significant things that we're doing, and I cannot underscore enough just how expensive it is, demining. Imagine all of the places where ISIS has strung up bombs around schools and homes and booby-trapped things, and so we bring in outside teams to conduct that demining. That is very expensive right now. You've seen the pictures, you've seen the rubble, you've seen the destruction and devastation. Another thing is removing all that rubble, getting the equipment in to do that. All of that tremendously expensive. on top of the security and the personnel that we have to enable to do that. Eventually, because we are not in the big nation building again that this government was previously in, ultimately, a lot of the cost of building roads and bridges and all that will be borne by other nations. We have talked about Saudi Arabia pledging to do a lot in terms of those big reconstruction projects. We won't be in that business anymore. We won't be spending that kind of money. So I think what the Secretary is referring to is we're spending a lot of money in a place like Syria. We don't anticipate that the amount that we're spending today will continue forever. Eventually, other countries start picking up the tab for some of the bigger projects as well.
That would require a political solution, presumably now with Russia's protege Assad still in power.
Right.
But I'll leave it there.
He
But that
is, you're absolutely right, he still is in power. We are committed to the Geneva process, and we are working toward that. Look, I think everyone here in this room and in this building wants Assad out 5 years ago, longer than that. It is going to be a political process. It is going to take some time to get there. Okay, it's not going to get there overnight. Still have a lot of work that needs to be done. Okay.
Spending
Pardon me?
The military is ramping up its spending in West Africa, in Somalia, in Afghanistan. There's 5,000 troops in Syria now. We
Yeah.
thought there were
Well,
only
that's a
2,000.
DoD issue. I can only speak. I can only speak to
speech
state.
seemed to suggest that you're on the cusp in the next budget year of having less to do. The military thinks it's going to have a lot to do for a lot longer.
I'm not going to look ahead to what our next year's budget will be. I have not seen those numbers, certainly.
He's
Okay.
justifying the budget he's already suggested
Yeah.
by suggesting that things are getting better already. You're not going to demand
No,
when you defeat
I think
Boko
he's
Haram?
saying that, down the road, we anticipate that, that some of the expenditures will be reduced, okay?
Just to get rid of
Okay,
it.
and then I'm going to have to take Lori, and then we have to wrap up.
Why did Melise Beams leave her post as counselor of the department?
So Melise Beams was brought in to help pull together the redesign. That's one of the things that the Secretary said is important to him and important to the State Department. And frankly, when you ask people here, the rank and file, what they think about the redesign, while our communications have not been fantastic, I will admit that, they support, by and large, the efforts of the redesign, acknowledging that the State Department can become more efficient and operate more effectively with the redesign. Melise Beams, I spoke with her earlier today at length. I was there yesterday when she announced to senior staff that she would be leaving the State Department. Melise made the decision to resign from the State Department. She said to me that she came here to set the vision for the redesign. She has done this for many companies. She's had a 30-year career in this line of work. She sets the vision. She's done that for this organization. She feels that she's accomplished that in setting the vision. She said to me, quote, "I feel good about it." So now is the time which she decided that she wanted to step back and that it was the time for the State Department to be able to pick it up from here. We are in phase 3 of the redesign right now. There are 70 initiatives that she helped enable to prepare to launch. Those initiatives are being chaired by some of our top career people who have been here for many, many years. Included among them, names and faces you will know, Ambassador Bill Todd, also Ambassador Marsha Bernakat from Bangladesh. They're involved in these 70 initiatives. They are people that the building knows. They're people that the building trusts. They're people who love this institution. I can tell you that the Secretary is expected to speak with staff here at the State Department sometime in the near future. I don't have a date for that just yet. And then we have our new Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Political Affairs who will be handling some of the communications going forward.
She was not asked or encouraged to leave?
She made the decision to step
She
down.
could have made the decision to step down after having been encouraged to consider whether to step down.
She made the decision to step down.
But was not encouraged or asked to
Not to
step
my
down?
knowledge. I was not in the meeting at the time, but I spoke with her. I also spoke with our Deputy Secretary and others about this, and this was her decision.
In a sentence, what is the vision that she has set for the redesign?
Well, one of the things that we've said is that this is an employee-driven process. And a lot of folks made fun of this, but asking employees what they want, what changes they want, is something that is new and something that is significant. And that is something that they've been able to do. to determine where there are redundancies. And that's one of the ways that we will do that. Among the other things in the redesign that has been highlighted as important to this department, and it may seem kind of dopey to a lot of folks who have great computers and comms like you all do, but to get a better computer system in place. I cannot stress
Better
computer system.
Because I was going to go all in on the better commuter system. The Metro is awful.
It is extremely frustrating when you are trying to respond to press questions, for example. How many times have you all heard from me or from Robert or Robert's predecessor, Mark Stroh, when our comms are down for a very long time? It is embarrassing. We can't get to you. You can't get to us. Well, imagine if we need to reach folks around the world. So that has been a problem. And that's one of the things that the Secretary and Melise Beams has identified as being something that we want to make more efficient and better. Okay?
I should have stopped hacking.
That's a good idea too, and we have that conversation all the time. Okay, question on Iraq, and then we've got to go.
Okay, earlier this week, the U.S. Embassy criticized the forced return of refugees to their homes in Anbar and Salahuddin provinces. Do you have any further comment or update on this situation?
Lori, I want to read a little bit from our statement to make sure that everyone has that accurately down. Our U.S. Embassy in Baghdad provided a statement earlier this week when they made clear that they support, and this is what we do with refugees all around the world, we support the safe, dignified, and voluntary return of people who've been displaced by the military operations to defeat ISIS. Safe and voluntary returns. We do not support forced returns. Forced returns, while it may sound great to some people who are living thousands and thousands of miles ahead, can be premature and they can be dangerous for those people. We do not support that. We want the voluntary and safe returns. Our statement went on to say this: to force people to return before they are ready and feel safe to do so risks their safety and well-being and could result in their renewed displacement. Provincial and federal authorities should ensure all returns are not only safe but also voluntary.
That would be for all of Iraq and pretty much everywhere.
Well, I think that pretty much applies everywhere. That's one of the things that we talk about in Burma, that we support the safe and voluntary return of the Rohingya from Bangladesh, many of whom are there, hundreds of thousands of them, and we support the safe and voluntary return. So I think that is a model or a phrasing or a policy that we would apply just about everywhere.
And regarding the Kurdish situation in disputed territories, in Tuz Kermatu, the hostile Shabi have been driving Kurds from their homes and looting and burning their homes. And yesterday, the Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government called on the international community to take action against this. What's your response to that?
Yeah, I can only tell you we've seen those reports. I have not seen those reports personally, so I don't want to get ahead of the information. We've seen the reports. We're monitoring the reports. Until I have additional information on that, I could just suggest that you talk with the government of Iraq and also the Kurdistan Regional Government.
Well, the Kurdistan Regional Government is in the process now of accumulating information. If it shows that these things have happened, would you take action?
That is entirely a hypothetical, so I'm just not going to get into a hypothetical. Yeah. Hi.
These videos of American prisoner and a British prisoner. What's your reaction to that? And is the U.S. ready to open up a dialogue with Iran on these cases, a humanitarian channel, since there are very few
well, first to the
channels now?
humanitarian issue, you know that we do not have an embassy on the ground there. The government of Switzerland is our protecting power. Switzerland is the country, just like we have talked about in other countries, like in DPRK, where they will do their best to represent us in the way that we can work with them on that. In terms of, I think what you're talking about, the video, correct, of the Princeton University student. Mr. Wang, he has been unjustly detained. It is a situation that we have followed very, very carefully. We continue to call on the government of Iran to release detained prisoners that are unjustly detained, in particular American citizens. We call on them to be released immediately. We strongly condemned Iran subjecting Mr. Wang and other prisoners to forced video appearances. That is something, it's shameful. It's shameful to use our people in that kind of fashion. what he was doing in Iran at the time as a university student at Princeton University. Princeton, by the way, I should mention, confirmed to us that Mr. Wang is in fact a graduate student. He was conducting legitimate research in Iran. I want to make clear he has no association with the U.S. government and has never passed any information to the U.S. government about the government of Iran. The Iranian authorities arrested him. His name, by the way, Shiyue. Please help me say it. Shiyue. Thank you. Pardon me. Wang. Yes. Xiyue. First name. Wang. W-A-N-G.
The other way.
But there's no talk about opening up, because one of the things like the Namazis have asked for is a conversation.
Not to my knowledge. I can tell you that Switzerland has visited him 5 times now. He was detained in August 2016 while he was studying Farsi. He was conducting research on late 19th and 20th century Iran. And he's been sentenced to 10 years in prison in April 2017 for espionage and assisting a hostile government. We see that as spurious at best.
Can I ask one quick question about this Zarab case in, the Turks have been complaining about this case in New York. Have they have they been talking to you diplomatically about this? Or are they, are there any diplomatic implications to this?
A lot of this, I'm just going to have to refer you to the Department of Justice on that particular case. Some of this in terms of conversations that we've had with Turkey would fall under private diplomatic conversations. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to have more for you on that, but in terms of the status of Mr. Zarab's case, I just have to refer you to the Department of Justice. Okay, guys, we got to leave it go.
There's a U.S. citizen who's imprisoned in Cuba, Alina Lopez Millares. You said that there was a crew, or at least a staff, in the embassy of the U.S. in Havana to assist American citizens. What is the U.S. government doing for this?
I'll have to get back to you on the specifics of her case. As you all may know, I have a separate book that has American citizens who are detained or held around the world. There are a lot of them. All of their cases are very important. All of their cases are very different, or many of them are very different. I don't have the specifics on her case in front of me, but I can certainly try to get you the answers, okay? And we're also limited. I want to, be clear in this. In some cases, we are very limited in terms of what we can say because of federal privacy laws. Okay. Bye, guys. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, folks, thank you very much for joining us and choosing us as your stream of choice. As you guys saw, we had a whole bunch of news that is coming out. There's still a lot of breaking news regarding North Korea, so stay tuned here on the channel at Golden State Times. If you are new, subscribe to the channel below. If you're watching this after it's been uploaded, make sure you check out our previous videos that should be coming up on your screen. They're interactive. Click on them. They'll take you to the video you might want to watch. And also, like I said, if you are new to the community, we encourage you to subscribe by clicking the red button below the video. And also visit our website, goldenstatetimes.com. We're going to be posting a whole bunch of news that we cannot post on YouTube because of demonetization. Okay, so we're going to be uploading it on our website at goldenstatetimes.com. Again, that's goldenstatetimes.com. If you'd like to help out the channel, continue operation, continue bringing you breaking news and live streams and all that stuff, you can contribute using the links in the description below, and we thank you very much in advance. Thank you to all the moderators for keeping the chat clean and enjoyable for everyone. You guys do an amazing job, and it's because of you that we have the best chat here on YouTube. So thank you so much for that. Also, thank you to all those that shared our stream on social media, Facebook, Twitter, gab.ai, all those websites. Thank you so much for spreading the word. And we are so close to our milestone. So thank you so much for your help. So yeah, folks, we hope to see you guys here next time. My name is Gent. I'm from Golden State Times, and I'll see you soon. Peace.